It's Radio Free 501c, brought to you by Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm Cecilia Sepp. Don't forget to subscribe on all your favorite podcast services. This week I'm welcoming first-time guests, the dynamic duo from Qiqo Chat, Sandra and Lucas Cioffi. They are here to talk about how they are transforming how we interact online. Our topic, the Association Marketplace, Adventures in Community. It's November 13th, 2023. Welcome to episode 218. Hey everybody, it's Monday, November 13th already. I'm told it has something to do with the Earth revolving around the sun, but it's almost the end of the year. So, hey, I'm Cecilia Sepp, your host. Welcome to Radio Free 501c. And we're here with the founders and leaders and innovators of Qiqo Chat. And we're going to be talking about the topic, the Association Marketplace, Adventures in Community. And we're going to have a really fun conversation. They also have a big event coming up in December we're going to talk about. But before we dive into that, welcome everyone, and I would like to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to our global audience. And thanks to everybody for signing in this week and listening to what I know is going to be an inspiring and thoughtful conversation. So, as I said, we have the leaders and founders of Qiqo Chat here this week, and we are going to start with telling you who they are, Sandra and Lucas Cioffi. And yes, folks, they are married founders and run a business together. So we're going to touch on that a little bit too. So before we dive into the content, Sandra, welcome. I'm so glad to have you both here. You're both first-time guests. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks so much for having us. My name is Sandra and I'm the CEO at Qiqo Chat. And, kind of not a hidden fact, but a true fun fact is that my background before getting into tech was as a landscape architect. So I am a designer and I am a person of the environment. So I like to see things, design things, and try to see how the world can be a better place.
Well, that is fascinating. I think being an architect and then trying to move into the nonprofit world would probably be very helpful to the worldview.
Yeah, for sure. And it's fun being in this space because I still work with people and try to connect people, but just now in a digital space.
Oh, wonderful. I love it. Okay, so Lucas, would you like to say hello and tell us a little about yourself?
Absolutely. So I started my career as an infantry officer in the United States Army and learned a lot about leadership and teamwork. And what I love about software, it's very team oriented. And the direction that our company has gone has been around communities, which is just an extension of teams. So that's what we do at Qiqo. We do software for communities, software for events, and software for marketplaces. And teaming up with Sandra, we have very different skills. So Sandra's excellent with design, and I can roll my sleeves up and get into the code. And we have a really strong dynamic that when, as a small team, we have to wear so many hats, and we always have, we always know enough to get started with something. But the strange thing is, every time we do something, like, I can't believe this is the first time we're doing this. And 3 years in, there's another first, another first. Just running a business has so many firsts. Like, we're writing a white paper now this week. All these surprises, but we take an approach of patiently get it done together, use our strengths, and it works out.
Well, that's very interesting because when I have my husband on the podcast as a guest, he's usually sharing information that I've never heard before. So I learn it when the rest of the world does. So, but we don't work together. So, although he is a chief staff executive at a nonprofit organization. So that's why I have him on once in a while. So he's also my emergency backup guest. So to Pete Sup at the National Taxpayers Union, thank you for being my emergency backup guest. So he also has lots of good information to share, of course. But let's get back to Sandra and Lucas because that's who's actually here today. So let's pull back on that. It sounds like you have a good working relationship, good dynamic. So how did you develop the ideas that became your company, Qiqo Chat?
Sure. Well, I'll give credit first to Lucas, who was the original idea behind Qiqo. He has a background in facilitation and bringing people together in person and learning how to convene communities and really talk about the things that are important to those communities. And he turned that into a platform to allow for these groups, large groups, to do that. And so the DNA of Qiqo is really to facilitate and allow for many groups of people to have conversations together through one event, multiple events, a series of community convenings. And so that's where the idea of Qiqo came about. And for those folks who might not know where the name came from, it stands for quality in, quality out. And I remember when I kind of poked him about how did the name come about. He said, "Well, there's like this geeky terminology in coding that's called garbage in, garbage out. And obviously, if you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. So he flipped the model and decided to call it quality in, quality out, or Qiqo for short. And I thought that was a really nice way of expressing kind of what the platform does. And you're bringing in quality conversations so that you can receive quality information out.
Oh, I love that because, as a researcher and somebody who used to be a data manager, it's like crap in, crap out. So I like having the more positive view of that. So, Lucas, what would you like to add on that?
Sure. So we really geek out about the format of information, the format of communication. And when there's an idea, sometimes it's communicated better in different mediums. And this might be some takeaway that the listeners might find interesting. So regardless of your role at your organization, you deal with some form of communication. And some ideas are ideas that they're fresh and they're only valuable because they're fresh. Other ideas are valuable because many people have worked on them. And yet other ideas are ideas of people coming together to create new ideas. And with Qiqo, Sandra mentioned quality in, quality out. We focused on how can people put really good ideas in, because 10 or 20 times the number of people are going to get the idea out. So if you focus on quality in, you build what we call a spirit of generosity, which makes the community really go around. Some people feel really comfortable. So this is another takeaway, I'd say. Thinking about the communication of members in a community, some prefer different mediums. Some prefer text message, some prefer chat, some prefer discussion forums, some prefer a Google Doc taking notes. Some prefer audio chat with video off. Some prefer Zoom. Some prefer live. Some prefer recorded. And well, we can get into that in terms of strategy about building community, but that's the genesis of our name, is focusing on how do you transmit ideas from one person to others and using the right format that really fits the mold that idea is born into.
Well, and that is exactly it. It doesn't matter what platform you're using. It's really about that building community and the generosity of spirit, as you called it, which I think is a great way to describe it, because people have to share and they have to ask questions and they have to answer the questions in the community. And these where communities of practice come into play, or communities of interest, or special interest groups, whatever you want to call them within the nonprofit world. It's how we're bringing people together. And as you said, it's about connection, community building. And you have originally the original platform that you created that I have personal experience with is it's an interface for Zoom meetings. And I was able to experience that a few years ago because AWTC had a holiday open house and they used your platform, your Qiqo platform, for that open house. And what I loved about that is it allowed people to control their Zoom experience instead of the host controlling it. And so, of course, as libertarian, love that, love the individual having choices. So, how is, and now you have the association marketplace, which first of all, Lucas, let's start with you this time. Can you explain a little bit more about your new platform, your new community building area called Association Marketplace, and how that evolved from that Zoom interface?
Absolutely. Well, our company just celebrated its 10-year anniversary, and
Woohoo.
we started with, back in 2012, the world was just getting organized around communities of practice. And the main thing that was there at the time was listservs. And we started thinking, how do you extract the real gold from the listservs? There's the running, churning discussion, but some things fall out of that as like consensus or great questions, and thinking about how do you pull out these gems from a churning discussion forum, because nobody has time to read a discussion forum going backwards. You only really look at discussion forums as they're happening now, but there's all these gems. So how do you extract those gems? So that was the first tool that we started building with Qiqo, is a way to create a knowledge repository. So our root was in community intelligence, collective intelligence.
Ooh.
And in 2015, we started getting requests for people to use, well, we had this idea, any of these gems could be turned into a video chat. So back in 2012, 2013, there were other tools. Zoom was not yet very popular. But our members, and the way that we like to develop features, so our members asked us for these new features. So they started saying, can you integrate with Zoom? And so we realized that there's a blue ocean out there for online conferences. Back in 2015, there was not a lot of demand for them. Where we started doing these online conferences with the communities that we personally were interested in, like civic tech and open government, essentially more transparency and public participation around government. We were living in DC, and these were the communities that we were part of. So we built the conference software for online communities to come together and generate new ideas, not just transmit ideas that you might have at a regular conference. Then the pandemic kicked off and people were saying, hey, now we really need these online conferences because we have to move from in-person to online. So demand skyrocketed very quickly. Now we're finally catching our breath because demand has subsided for those online conferences, but the root of our company is with community. And so we're going back to that core with one important lesson learned from the pandemic, that associations really liked how we were doing online trade shows as part of their online conferences. And Sandra and I were thinking, what if we just spun that out into its own platform, its own product? And so that's where this idea of a marketplace that lasts all year round, not just the 3 days of an in-person or online conference. Sandra, would you like to add anything more to the concept of marketplace and where we're headed?
Yeah, I think that also simultaneously, I come, as I mentioned, I come from the sort of the design architecture world as a licensed professional, part of a different association, actually a member, and seeing, what are the resources that I, as a member, really need and want from my association, but wasn't really actually getting. And I felt like I also started a small practice a couple of years ago, a solopreneur practice, when I thought that I was going to go forward in that direction because, well, I needed to support myself, but also I wanted to do something different. But when I started my own business, I didn't really know where to go for really critical and simple things. Do I need a lawyer? Do I need an accountant? What platform should I use to do my accounting? Or what tools do I need to start writing RFPs or responding to them? So all these things that I needed access to, I couldn't find a place to go find those answers. I had to know people. And then I had to know people who would be willing to help me with that information. And so again, I'm stuck in this position of where do I go? What do I do? And where can I find the stuff that I need to help myself advance? And so that world of experience coupled with now, crossing over to what we were experiencing on Qiqo Chat side is we're going, there's an exchange that needs to happen, right? A place to discover not just one thing, but many things and making it accessible for a community of people, a community of practice that desperately needs to help each other get ahead. So that was a long-winded way of saying, all these different moments in our trajectory kind of led to this marketplace idea.
And that actually makes a lot of sense. I can totally relate to that. This is my second consultancy. The first one I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I just sent out a bunch of emails and told people, hey, I'm a consulting company now, and then sat there and waited, very similar to Abraham Lincoln putting an ad in the paper, hey, legal services available. And he ended up causing a big scandal because lawyers didn't advertise at that point. But yeah, you're right. It's like, how do you find out what you need? How do you know what question to ask? Like, when you're new in the nonprofit world or as a new solopreneur or new small business, you don't always know what questions to ask. And so having that year-round marketplace, which has me thinking it's kind of like the farmers market
Yeah.
that we have where I live in Montgomery County, Maryland. There's several farmer markets. Actually, there's one where I live in Silver Spring. And it's pretty much every week until the winter weather hits. And so you go down to the farmer market and walk up and down and see what they have and see if there's anything of interest to you. So is that a good description of how your new association marketplace might work?
I- Yes, precisely. It's like you know that some wherever you live, there's got to be a local farmers market, or at least you hope there is. You know, it's generally a trend that we're all now used to having access to. But you know, okay, every Saturday or every Sunday, there's a farmers market, and you know where it is. It's downtown, wherever your downtown is, your local community kind of watering hole or watering hole. Is that the right term? Um, and so it's the place where you go and you can get you know you're in you get to see what's going on, what the vendors are, who's selling fresh apples, and you might also get to see like what are the local events that are happening in your area. So it's the same concept, but you know in like your mental map, there's this place that exists. It happens rhythmically every Saturday, and that's the goal too with the association marketplace, which is for an association or for the our community is to know this is where I'm going to go whenever I need it, and it's going to have all this information, kind of this fresh content, fresh listing of events, and also access to each other as a community. Who's who's around? If I have a question, I'd love to reach out to somebody who might be able to give that answer back to me, rather than kind of like shouting into a discussion forum and just like praying if I go back, someone's going to respond to that message.
Well, that's true because sometimes I see people put things out like at ASAE in the Collaborate community, they put out a question and I realize like nobody ever answers. Like they never get a response. So I don't know if people just don't know or maybe you don't know, but you're right. If you can build those relationships, it's very easy to find the information you need or that old thing about like, well, I know a guy who knows a guy. Even that can be helpful. So, Lucas, let's bring it back to you, to your side. We're very good about outlining community and how community works and your goals for Association Marketplace. So, who is welcome in Association Marketplace?
Well, we wanted to make sure that the association marketplace is adding value to the, broadly speaking, the association community. So we had to think deeply about what are all the components of the community. When we start to see an ecosystem, there's consultants, there's association executives, there's association staff, and there's industry partners. And there's also these convening organizations like
Mhm.
SAE and OrgSource and AMCI and Association Forum. And each of them has a different role to play. And we just think, how can we help move information around in a way where the people who want to share it, it's easier for them, and the people who want to receive it, it's easier for them. So we start thinking about the flow of information. Some information is good as a newsletter. Other information, like we're talking here about recommendations, where someone might ask a question in a discussion forum on Collaborate, and maybe that question was asked 3 months ago. There's a better format for those kinds of recommendations where you have like a living Q&A where stale answers kind of go down to the bottom and more fresh answers that have more support at this moment because of the changing conditions kind of rise to the top. And creating those new ways for information to flow between these stakeholders can unlock a lot of value. Maybe one more thought is, if we have this concept called the tech stack or a solution stack. And so if there's someone that you respect at a different organization and they're kind of a few years ahead of you in your career, and they know a few more things, of course, you know things that they don't know, but you look at their solution stack to see what consultants are they using to solve which problems? What technology are they using to solve which problems? It's a way for them to essentially broadcast the things that they would like to recommend to others. And they're not waiting for someone to ask the question. Instead, they're proactively broadcasting, this is my stack. This is what I depend on. These are the people that help me build this association, because they want to see those consultants succeed too. So it's a way to proactively put that information out there. And then you can start mapping out these tech stacks among a lot of execs. And that is going to unlock a lot of value. And we're really excited for that one innovation.
Oh, I just love that. And yes, tech stack was my favorite phrase a couple of years ago when I took a certificate program on virtual events from the Virtual Event Institute. And that's where I learned tech stack. And I'm like, I used it every sentence I could. I was like, oh, well, how cool. I got to build my tech stack. How do you build a tech stack? What's your tech stack? No, I love that. It's great. It sounds to me too, like as a solopreneur consultant, it can be hard to get visibility. So there's a lot of really good consultants out there that don't get recommended like an ASA Collaborate because they're too busy working, or they're,
Yes.
maybe they just don't have that referral network built up. But if you're in a community like this, you might be seen more often. Also, I need to quit being so shy about asking people to write recommendations, but that's another story. So this
Let
is
me jump
great.
on that
So,
one, Cecilia. So if
mhm,
you're already doing the work to ask people to recommend you, but it's so much work to ask for that every time the question pops up. So
yes.
there should just be a simpler way to structure that information so that you can ask them one time, and anyone who wants to find that can easily find out who recommends Cecilia, and then they go from there.
Oh, I love that. That's gonna, oh my gosh, that's gonna be such a great service for all of us solopreneurs and smaller consulting companies. And I'm just excited about it. And especially since at ASAE, the consultant community is getting more active again and trying to find proactive ways that we can partner together or make appropriate referrals together and also get to know each other a little better. So is there any sort of a social aspect to Association Marketplace?
Yeah, we're also building live interactions through video chat. So there are multiple ways we're doing this. One example is through open office hours.
Mhm.
So if you want to go meet up with somebody who's hosting their own open office hour, you can see them on a map, or just kind of showing that they are live on Zoom or whatever their video chat tool of choice is. And you can just go kind of like hop into their office online and have a quick chat, just like you would if you were a brick and mortar shop and you open your store at 9 a.m. and you close at 5. You just know that they're open during those office hours. Same idea, except online. The second thing is we're having a community, a lounge, and we're calling it the Percolator, where folks can kind of drop in at any time or use it like a communal coffee space, coffee chat space, where say one day you're like, you know what, let's go meet up in the lounge or in the Percolator, and let's do it at 8:30 in the morning for just like 20 minutes or so. Let's chat as a small group. You can go in and out as you'd like, or it could be a scheduled time, right? As the community can choose. Maybe we want to do these monthly meetups or bi-weekly meetups to talk about some pressing issues, and you use it as a community space to do that.
Oh,
If I
that
could,
sounds great.
so
Uh,
please go ahead. Sorry for I get excited when she starts talking about the
No, no,
percolator.
no. Go ahead, Lucas. Go ahead. I wasn't going to say anything important, as anyone who listens regularly realizes.
Well, we have all these plans as community builders, as technologists, as designers, but the most important things, we've got to approach this with a sense of humility and an openness and a willingness to learn. We're going to put these tools out there, and we're going to find that some take off and some people are not interested in using. And nothing has to be our way. It has to be inverted. The platform pretty much has to be invisible, and people just have to be able to find each other and do the things they want to do. So that's our goal, is keep listening to see how the tools are used and then support what people are already doing.
And it sounds though like it's much more interactive than a lot of the things that we're using right now. So, for example, I know like my community association uses groups.io,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very static there, and so what you end up having is times of tension where people are arguing back and forth in email, which is never a good thing to do. So it seems to me that this kind of a format, it's real time, even though it's virtual, and we can just really kind of talk, and you don't have to like get in an argument with people. I mean, that happens on any group, whether it's groups.io or ASA Collaborate. Fine systems, but again, more static. Like they're almost like those old listservs, like you mentioned, Lucas, which we used to call monuments to inactivity because people didn't use them because they just sat there. So I just am excited about this. Now, there is another exciting thing coming up that we must talk about. So in December, you are hosting a different kind of virtual event called People Powering Tech. It's a most of the day virtual real time event with lots of cool people. And Barbara Armentrout of BJA Solutions has promised me it will not be boring at all. So, can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, so we took advantage of an opening in the schedule, which actually came about because we know ASAE Tech decided to, or ASA decided to cancel its tech conference in December. And we thought, well, it shouldn't just go away. I mean, this is our humble opinion. We felt like it shouldn't go away, but who else could possibly step in and provide a space, an event space to do that? And with some thinking, we reached out to some other consultants and are co-convening this with Delcor, A Church Consulting, um, High Road Solutions, and 501 Works and Perbyte. So this is a collaboration among several teams to think about what is the best tech conference that we can put together for association professionals at all levels. And the name came about because we were thinking about the people behind the technology, because technology doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in ways that in which we use technology. So that's why we decided to call it People Powering Tech. And the model is going to be very different for this conference. And we're introducing a new format called open space technology. I shouldn't say it's new. It might be newer to folks in the association industry, but it's been done many, many times, and we're pretty agile with this format called open space technology, where it's really bringing people's conversation topics, what's burning in them to talk about with peers in their group, and they put forward the topics. They're the ones expressing in the moment the conversations that they want to have, and then we have space for them to actually host those conversations. So that's one aspect of it. We also do have some presentations by the co-conveners who are, it's more workshop like, but they are interactive, talking about tech. How do we all use tech? And then we also have a great powerhouse panel where we'll have Reggie Henry from ASAE, we'll have Artesia Moore from Association Forum, and Terry Carden from Non-Duzapalooza. And they'll definitely kickstart the day with really fascinating, fun conversation about what's ahead for the community.
Yeah, I know all three of them, so that's definitely going to be interesting.
Yeah.
So, that'll be a great way to kick it off. I agree, and I want to bring it back a little bit. I wanted to make sure we mentioned this conference because it is different. I think it's going to be inspirational to association staff who attend and give them some ideas for how they could do more virtual and online, not just training but connection, and just give them some good ideas. Because I think to both your point about it's people behind the tech, it's tech's a tool, it's how you use it that makes the difference, and if you're using the right tool, of course. But I think, after the lockdown, everybody acted like we didn't need to do virtual anymore. And before the lockdown, people acted like we never did it before, which both are inaccurate. So they're not exactly on point, because we were doing webinars. I've had a paid Zoom account for like 10 years. So I was always trying to get people on Zoom. Hey, you want to have a Zoom lunch? I don't want to be on camera. It's like, I don't care if you stick on, right? It's like, no, I want to be on camera. We can see each other. And then people were like, all of a sudden, everything was on Zoom or whatever other platform they wanted to use. I think most of us use Zoom, but people acted like it was like something they never did, never thought about, and it simply wasn't true. We were doing online real-time webinars before we were doing that. And another thing I wanted to mention is ASAE's first virtual conference in 2020. They had more people attend that conference than any other conference because it was virtual, and people from all over the country could attend and participate. People who did not have the budget to maybe travel and pay a really high registration fee for an in-person. Now, of course, that year the fee was no fee at all if you were a member, and very low if you were a non-member. But the point being, that opportunity for people to connect using these tools, this is awesome. It's like having the telephone. When the telephone first came into being, oh my gosh, my mom would sit on the phone for 3 hours sometimes talking to her friends, because we didn't have this, but that was real-time conversation. So our real-time experiences have just evolved. And I also wanted to mention, you were talking about how, well, tech has gone away. It's now being merged with MMCC next year. So it'll be a little bit bigger conference, I think. But in 2010, we had what we called the unconference because we were supposed to have tech conference that December, but the snowpocalypse happened.
Oh,
And
right.
so and Snowmageddon and everything shut
I
down.
remember.
Yeah. Did you guys participate in that? Because I
We only
participated.
That was 5 years before we got involved in the association
Okay.
community. But we
Okay.
remember the snowstorm in DC.
Oh, you remember the snowstorm. I mean, you'll never forget that if you were here. I mean, there's no way, snowpocalypse, Snowmageddon. I don't think we saw the ground again until April.
Seriously, I remember that.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I had just had a surgery. And so, I couldn't have left the house anyway. But all these people were at the hotel already. And it was people like in tech, like Peach Media, which was bought and now Propel, I think. And I don't know, everybody's getting bought by other people. But the point being, there were people already there and there were tech people. And they said, let's just do the conference ourselves because we're already here. And so we were able to get online, participate, and you could see the people in the room. So that's 2010, 13 years ago. So we were already doing it. And in reaction to an isolated incident, but the lockdown was an isolated incident too. So I'm hoping that people will take away from this conversation. And if they go to your December event, that they will take away from that. There's a lot of value and robustness and richness in doing things virtually using these awesome real time tools. I mean, I remember when I used to think it was cool, I could send a fax to Australia because I was standing there and realized it's coming out on the other side of the world on a different day. And now look at these powerful tools we have for connection and community and relationship building and knowledge building. And that's really why we're here.
Yeah.
So
I,
that being said,
um,
Sandra,
yeah, I'm really glad you brought this topic up. It's one of those you might pause to really dive in, but I'm ready to do that because I feel like accessibility is one of the key unspoken words here, which is, these events in general are really hard to access because you have to think about travel costs, as you mentioned. You have to think about time away from work. You have to get permission from your boss. You have to, maybe if you're a parent, you have to get childcare. You have to figure out so many other things that I feel like it creates so many of these barriers for just one individual to participate. And with virtual events, I feel like I have now been able to give back to so many other people because, like myself, who I used to be that person, I still am that person oftentimes, actually. When I can't access things because I'm a mother of two children and I can't travel, I can't figure out who's going to watch my kids, right? Or I don't have the budget in generally, I don't have the budget to go anywhere. So, or I have budget to go to one thing, right? I can't go
right.
to the 10 things a year. And so it really becomes a thing of accessibility that I feel like now virtual events provides that. And I hope that people who organize events, people who organize community gatherings can also see this as a tool to bring more people in. The hard thing is to market, right? To market these events. I mean, that's just a new challenge. It's an existing challenge, but it's also going to be a new challenge. But I think that should be a reason why we work harder at that because there's now more opportunities that we are all capable of creating for those who are typically not in the room because they can't afford it, get there, make time for it.
That's right. Oh, I'm so glad you said that. I agree 100%. It's too hard. Getting the permission from your boss is really, I think, the main obstacle. If you can get past that, maybe they'll find the money too. But you're absolutely right. And then when we're talking about accessibility, there's issues of people who maybe they have vision needs or hearing needs, and maybe they need subtitles or they can just listen, or maybe they're neurodiverse in a different way and they need a different way to access information.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
oh,
Sorry. Just I remember a moment we were running an event for an organization, and it, this was anyway. I remember we had set it up. Everything was going smoothly. The speakers were going, and somebody was chatting with me because I was hosting that space, and they said, the captions aren't working. The captions aren't working. Can you turn on the captions? And I said, absolutely. And then I had realized that one of the settings wasn't right. So I said, I had to, I kind of basically stopped the whole show. I said, excuse me. And I did it in a very polite way, but we'd like to make sure that an individual guest on this, in this presentation can access the captions. So what I'll have to do is please restart the Zoom. Everyone, just all you have to do is re-click open this one little button on the Qiqo event space, and we'll be back live and momentarily. But just please, let's all do this together. And I just helped coach it very simply, swiftly, and it was magic. We just all restarted again. That one person was, of course, very grateful. But what happened also in that moment is that everybody else also recognized how important that was to include people who needed the captions, who needed an interpreter, to just give that assistance. And those moments count, make a really big difference.
Oh, go ahead, Lucas.
One more anecdote. It's always good for any of us to be put back into a learner's mindset. And captions is one example. And another one is when someone is speaking in a different language other than English, and then the translation's coming to us through the captions, it tells us all, it reminds us all that many others are living that experience where they have to receive the translations all the time. And we just see when people are put back in that learner's mindset, they approach the subject matter with more thought, care, and empathy. And then the conference becomes even more meaningful. I don't have the words to describe. There's probably like a simple phrase, but every time people are just nudged to be thoughtful and intentional, they rise to the occasion. And if all you look at is the news these days, you don't really see that. But these moments are really encouraging, and they happen with regular frequency in these online events.
I thank you for sharing that. I love that example. I It's so true. I have given presentations or spoken at groups that they're in another country. So, for example, years ago, I gave a virtual presentation to the Ukraine Taxpayers Association. And so I heard I was just a big giant head on the wall, but they had translators and there were people from all over the world at this conference because it was also the World Taxpayers Group. So we had to make sure to pause to allow for that translation. So, we need to keep all these things. It's very difficult for us to remember all of these balls we need to keep in the air, but I'm so glad you both have reminded us of that.
You're very welcome. And in terms of takeaways from this discussion, I'd say if anyone's interested in joining that December 14th event, we'll put the URL in the notes of the show, but it's peoplepowering.tech. Peoplepowering.tech. There's an early bird discount on there right now, and it's highly affordable. It's like the price of Ubers in all directions and maybe a snack or two, and that's the whole price of the whole event. So maybe one more thought about online events. The place where we eventually see online events going is becoming more conversational, and also in-person events becoming more about social and party, less about delivery of information, because delivery of information can be done better online. So we also see the unconference model working in person. And for those that aren't too familiar with what we're talking about with unconferences, Cecilia mentioned it happened in the hotel during Snowmageddon. It's when the participants take responsibility for a topic that they are passionate about. And they say, I want to talk about this topic in room 6 at 3 p.m. And it might only be 4 or 5 people that show up in that, or maybe there's 20. But that's the right number of people, because those are the ones that are most interested in that topic. And out of unconferences, you build tremendous relationships. So that's what we're going for in the December 14th event, really kicking open the doors in an accessible way so that anyone can participate in an online event to connect with others in the association nonprofit industries, to talk about the topics that they're most passionate about.
Yeah, if I might add on to that is some real life examples where this is where I feel like the value of virtual connections, online connections through video chat is, I think, critical for our path forward, because I'll speak for myself. I'm an extreme introvert. Social settings, especially professional social settings, are extremely intimidating to me. But because I've had this online capability to meet folks, and you meet people maybe repeatedly, maybe meet them once, but you will remember them because we all see each other, kind of two dimensionally, which is nice. And you also see each other in gallery view for the most part, as opposed to like scanning the room. And going to then, after meeting people online, then going to an in person event is so much more rich because I can now refer to, oh, hey, I met you at such and such event online. It's so great to meet you. And actually, those in person connections, that's all you really want from that moment is the, hey, I can actually give you a hug and or shake your hand. And it's really nice to meet you now that we're both here. It's so, lovely to make that final connection. But if you think about it the other way around, there needs to be either oftentimes some alcohol or some other social lubricant to even give somebody the confidence to say, "Hi, I'm so and so. I don't know you, but essentially I'm introducing myself." And I don't know. I rarely like to do that. It's very intimidating for me. I probably, Cecilia, I would know who you are because you do this podcast and you're all over the place, but I would have more fear and intimidation to go up to you and be like, "Hi, I'm Sandra," like really nice to meet you, as opposed to having met online and doing this, you know, on an
Right.
ongoing
So
basis.
because you have an entree that way, because that actually happens to me sometimes when I go to in-person events, people come up and talk to me like they know me because they've seen my podcast or they've seen some of my other content online. And, it's actually one of the funniest things that happened at the ASA 2022 conference. I was in the bathroom washing my hands and some woman yelled my name and I turned around and I looked at her and she's like, "Oh, you don't know me. I just follow you online." And then like, "Oh, thank you." It's just so you're right. You do build that relationship, that familiarity with people in these real time conversations. So I think it's great because like I will use that as an entree. I used to be very shy too, Sandra. I've never been an introvert, but I was shy. Like I never went to go up and just start talking to people or interrupt them, when they're talking. But then I just one day it just hit me at a reception, all these other people are just as uncomfortable as I am. So I'm just going to start talking to people. And that's how I did it. And I also, if I see somebody standing alone, because, we're humans, we tend to cluster with the people we already know, although we're supposedly networking to meet new people. We just talk to the people we already know. So if I see somebody standing alone, I go over and I say, "Do you want to be alone or do you want to meet some people?" I've never had someone say like Greta Garbo, "I want to be alone." No, they want to meet people, And so I bring them, "Hey, meet some people," and then they're going, they're fine. So let's all remember that too in the real world and the virtual world. Let's help each other get to know each other. So, this has been a great conversation about community, sharing knowledge, building relationships, making connections. We've learned about a great new place to go online, the Association Marketplace, and we have a fantastic event to look forward to next month, at least according to Barbara Ermintrout. That's right, Barbara. I'm holding you accountable for it not being boring. So, we'll see. Anyway, before we sign off, I love to ask my guest for a final thought. What's the one thing you want the audience to take away today? And how can they get in touch with you or learn more about what you're doing? So let's start with Lucas.
Well, with an unconference, people don't have to come with the answers. They don't have to come with a presentation. They just really have to come with a great question they'd like to get the answer to and approach with a learning mindset with their peers. Um, if anybody can't afford the 150 early bird rate, just reach out to us, Lucas at QiqoChat.com, and we will take care of it. We want to make sure there's no obstacles that anyone who wants to attend can attend. I want to say one more note of thanks. Cecilia, you were talking about meeting people, and what you've done here with this podcast is really wonderful because you're giving people a chance to meet each other online. And these opportunities would not exist unless it was for someone weaving the community together as you are. So for that, we are deeply grateful.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Lucas. I appreciate that. I enjoy bringing people together. So thank you. As she tries to not be embarrassed. Okay. Thank you very much. Sandra, what is your final thought today and how can people get in touch with you?
Sure. So my final thought is I'm going to just use one word: discoverability. And I would love to be remembered, or we would love to be remembered for helping each other, helping uh, businesses and people and networks to get discovered by thinking of Qiqo and the association marketplace. That is our role, is to help each other get discovered, information to get discovered, relationships to be discovered, conversations to be discovered too, like all these things. So that's my key takeaway, is the word discoverability. And anybody can reach out to me at Sandra, Sandra, Sandra at QiqoChat.com.
That's great. Well, thank you both. We've known each other for a little bit of time now, and we've had several conversations. And I was very flattered to be one of the people interviewed as you were building out Association Marketplace. And I'm looking forward to participating in that more strongly, more often. Probably more often would be a better word. But thank you so much. I'm so glad you guys could join me on the podcast, and I'm sure you will be back.
Thanks for having
thank
us.
you both.
We really appreciate it.
You are welcome. And I appreciate you both being my guest, and I appreciate the audience. So thank you all again for joining us this week. If you'd like to learn more about Rogue Tulips Consulting and how we can help your organization bloom outside the box, check out our website, roguetulips.com. You can see a list of some of our services. If you don't see what you have in mind, let's talk. Also, we believe in transparency. All of our fees are on the services page if you're building out a budget. Now, if you are a curious sort like myself and you're looking for nonprofit management education, check out our education program. It is so big. It has its own website, the501cleague.net. We're wrapping up the fall session, but we are working on our spring schedule already. So stay tuned for that. So on behalf of Sandra, Lucas, and myself, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.